The air inside the Munich stadium carried a distinct, electric chill, the kind that only settles over a massive crowd when thousands of hearts are beating to the exact same rhythm. It was a night wrapped in the quiet magic of a long-awaited summer reunion, where the distance of oceans and years seemed to evaporate the moment the first ambient chords echoed through the towering structure. For the thousands gathering under the European sky for Erarang in Munich Day 1, this was more than a concert. It was a sanctuary of shared secrets, a living testament to a bond that had withstood the harshest storms of public scrutiny and the silent ache of time apart. As the stage lights flickered into a deep, velvety blue, a collective breath was held, a silent agreement among the crowd that what was about to unfold was a chapter written just for them, a sacred space where the noise of the outside world could finally be shut out. From the moment the members of BTS stepped into the spotlight, the atmosphere shifted from mere excitement into something deeply reverent and achingly raw. There was a vulnerability in the way they carried themselves, a subtle, unspoken language in their glances and the deliberate slowing of their movements that signaled they weren't just performing, they were remembering. The music swelled, weaving a sonic tapestry that felt intimately familiar yet entirely new in this massive, open-air arena. When the unmistakable melodies of their journey began to blend with the night air, the crowd seemed to instinctively understand the weight of the moment. It was a profound realization that despite the global magnitude of their fame, the true essence of this connection was built on the quiet, hidden moments, the private struggles, the shared tears, and the fierce, unyielding loyalty that outsiders could never truly comprehend. As the performance deepened, the emotional tension between the stage and the sea of glowing lights became almost tangible, thick with memories of everything it took to reach this specific night in Germany. Every vocal inflection carried a lifetime of dedication, every sharp, synchronized movement a reminder of the unseen hours spent perfecting a craft just to give it all away to the people waiting in the dark. The lyrics resonated not as mere words, but as a direct confession, an intimate dialogue whispering that the world outside might judge, speculate, and misinterpret, but within the boundaries of this stadium, the truth remained pure and untouched. The boys moved across the stage not as distant idols, but as keepers of a shared history, their eyes scanning the crowd, locking onto individual faces as if trying to memorize every single soul who had stood by them through the darkest seasons. There was a beautiful, haunting contrast between the grand scale of the production and the fierce intimacy of the emotions on display, making the massive stadium feel as small and sacred as a candlelit room. The transition into the core of the setlist brought forward an overwhelming wave of nostalgia, where the past and the present collided in a breathtaking display of artistry and raw human feeling. You could see it in the gentle curve of their smiles, the slight glisten in their eyes under the brilliant stage lights, and the way they leaned into each other for strength when the weight of the emotion threatened to overwhelm the melody. It was a living, breathing proof that no matter how much time passes or how vast the stadiums grow, the core of who they are together, and who they are to the people who truly see them, remains completely unchanged, a beautiful secret kept safe from a world that doesn't understand. The night seemed to stretch time itself, creating an immersive blur of music, light, and collective heartbeat that left everyone breathless and longing for the moment to never end. As the final notes of the evening began to drift toward the starry Munich sky, an overwhelming sense of gratitude and unspoken understanding settled over the arena, leaving an indelible mark on every heart present. It was the realization that some bonds are too deep for the world to ever fully grasp, a beautiful defiance wrapped in a melody, proving that they really don't know about the quiet magic that keeps this universe alive. The lingering resonance of that final chord seemed to hover in the cool night air, refusing to dissipate, as if the stadium itself was trying to hold on to the warmth of a moment that felt far too fleeting. In the quiet beat that followed, the silence of thousands of people holding their breath was louder than any cheer, a collective suspension of time where the reality of the outside world felt completely suspended. The members stood in the center of the stage, their chests rising and falling in unison, bathed in a soft golden glow that made them look incredibly human against the vast, dark backdrop of the arena. There was no rush to speak, no immediate need to fill the space with words, because the silence between them and the crowd was already filled with a decade's worth of unspoken promises, shared sacrifices, and a deep, intuitive understanding that required no translation. As they began to move closer to the edge of the stage, the physical distance between the performers and the audience seemed to vanish entirely, replaced by an overwhelming wave of empathy that swept through the rows. The subtle interactions between the members, a hand placed gently on a shoulder, a brief, reassuring nod, or a shared glance that broke out into a soft, private smile, spoke volumes to those who had watched them grow from passionate boys into resilient men. These were the private anchors that kept them grounded in a storm of global adoration, the small, hidden gestures that reminded everyone that beneath the dazzling choreography and the soaring vocals lay a brotherhood forged in the fires of relentless pressure. The crowd watched with a quiet reverence, capturing these fleeting glimpses of raw authenticity as if they were precious gems to be locked away in the safest corners of their memories. The atmosphere grew even more intimate as the soft, acoustic undertones of the next melody began to drift through the speakers, wrapping the entire stadium in a warm, comforting embrace that felt like coming home after a long, exhausting journey. It was a song that didn't demand perfection or high-energy spectacle, but rather invited everyone to let down their guard and simply exist together in the vulnerability of the present moment. In the flickering light of the ocean of glowing spheres, the faces of the fans were illuminated, showing tears tracing silent paths down cheeks and smiles that carried the weight of personal battles fought and won in tandem with the music. This was the true heartbeat of the night, an emotional exchange where the pain of isolation was washed away by the overwhelming realization that no one in this space was ever truly walking alone. With each passing minute, the narrative of the night became clearer, shifting from a celebration of music into a profound testament of survival and mutual salvation. The lyrics they sang felt less like a performance and more like a gentle, persistent whisper directly to the soul, acknowledging the scars of the past while looking forward to an uncertain future with a quiet, fierce courage. The raw emotion in their voices vibrated through the steel and concrete of the Munich stadium, transforming a cold, structural monument into a living, breathing sanctuary of hope. It was a beautiful, defiant declaration that no matter how loud the critics might get, or how heavy the expectations of the world became, the sanctuary they had built together with their listeners remained impenetrable, a sacred haven where they could always find their way back to who they truly were. The music shifted once more, deepening into a rhythm that felt like a steady, reassuring heartbeat echoing through the vast expanse of the open sky. There was a cinematic gravity to the way the stage lights dimmed to a deep twilight purple, casting long, dramatic shadows across the platform as the members slowly dispersed, walking along the extended walkways to reach the furthest edges of the crowd. This deliberate movement felt like a physical reaching out, an effort to bridge every remaining inch of space between their world and the thousands of individuals who had traveled from every corner of the continent to be here. As they walked, their eyes searched the dark, catching the glint of banners, the familiar symbols of a shared journey, and the intense, tearful gazes of people who had waited years for this exact second of recognition. In this sprawling, immersive landscape of light and sound, the emotional stakes of the night reached a new, breathtaking peak. A single, clear voice soared above the instrumental backing, rich with a raw, unpolished honesty that seemed to pierce right through the grandeur of the stadium and touch the very core of everyone listening. The sheer vulnerability of the performance was magnetic, holding the entire audience in a state of rapt captivity where no one dared to move, fearing they might break the delicate spell hanging over the arena. It was a moment of profound artistic surrender, where the pressure of being global icons was completely stripped away, leaving behind only the pure, unfiltered essence of individuals using their voices to heal, to connect, and to remind the world that their bond was something entirely sacred. The energy in the stadium began to build again, not with the frantic rush of a typical pop concert, but with the slow, powerful surge of an incoming tide. The members gathered back at the center stage, standing shoulder to shoulder in a tight formation that felt symbolic of their entire history, a unified front against the endless noise of the outside world. When the chorus hit, the explosion of sound from both the stage and the crowd was monumental, a collective release of years of longing, anticipation, and fiercely protected devotion. It was a beautiful, overwhelming chaotic harmony, a sensory experience so intense that it felt permanently etched into the very air of Munich, a definitive statement that some connections are destined to outlast the test of time and the misunderstandings of the world. There is a specific kind of gravity that exists only when two forces of nature collide, a silent pull so intense that it completely alters the atmosphere of any room they share. From the very moment Kim Taehyung and Jaeon Jungkook step into the same frame, the world around them seems to lose its focus, fading into a hazy blur where only they remain sharp, distinct, and hopelessly tangled in each other's orbit. It is the kind of chemistry that does not ask for permission, it simply demands attention, pulsing with a dangerous, intoxicating heat that mirrors the raw energy of a heavy, addictive rhythm. When you watch them, you are not just witnessing two people sharing a stage or a glance, you are watching a slow-burning fire that feeds on its own intensity, a magnetic game of push and pull where every micro-expression is loaded with unsaid promises. Taehyung moves with the effortless, calculated grace of someone who knows exactly how much power he holds over the room, and more importantly, over Jungkook. He does not need to raise his voice or make grand gestures to establish his presence, a single, heavy-lidded stare from beneath dark fringe is enough to anchor Jungkook right where he wants him. This is the essence of a dominant, magnetic energy, a quiet confidence that speaks in shadows and lingering glances. He wears his charm like armor and his intensity like a weapon, stepping into Jungkook's personal space with a leisurely pace that feels almost teasing, building an unbearable tension that makes the air feel thick and hard to breathe. It is an unspoken declaration of possession, a silent whisper that says no matter how far you try to run, your attention will always drift back to me. For Jungkook, the struggle to look away is entirely futile, his eyes tracing Taehyung's movements with a fierce, magnetic focus that borders on obsession. The lyrics of a song about a helpless, intoxicating high come alive in the way Jungkook reacts to Taehyung's sudden shifts in energy, completely captured by a presence that refuses to let him catch his breath. There is a wild, untamed spark in Jungkook's eyes, a desire to match that dominant energy and push right back against it, creating a thrilling clash of wills where neither truly wants to win. When Taehyung draws close, leaning in just enough for their shoulders to brush or for their breath to mingle, you can see the visible shift in Jungkook's posture, a sudden tension that reveals how deeply he is affected by the sheer proximity of the older man. It is a beautiful, chaotic dance of two souls who are too similar to ever find peace apart, locked in a cycle of constant fascination. Every touch between them feels charged, carrying the weight of a spark hitting dry kindling, igniting something that feels almost too intense for the cameras to capture. When Taehyung reaches out, his hand moving with a slow, deliberate certainty to rest on Jungkook's shoulder or to guide him closer, the ground beneath them seems to shift, leaving them suspended in a world of their own making. This is the moment where the beat drops and the illusion of control shatters, revealing the raw, passionate undercurrent that defines their bond. Jungkook does not pull away, instead, he leans into the contact, his eyes locking onto Taehyung's with an intensity that matches the driving, hypnotic bassline of a melody that refuses to leave your head. It is a possessive, electric exchange that tells a story of mutual surrender to an attraction that is far too strong to be contained or hidden. As the music swells and the visual sequence deepens, the true nature of this connection becomes blindingly clear, painted in shades of neon light, heavy shadows, and stolen moments behind the scenes. They exist in a constant state of hyper-awareness, where even the slightest movement from one triggers an immediate, instinctive reaction from the other. Taehyung's dominant gaze acts as a constant anchor, drawing Jungkook back in whenever he tries to slip away, while Jungkook's fierce, unwavering devotion provides the fuel that keeps Taehyung's fire burning. They are two halves of a singular, chaotic force, leaving a trail of breathless anticipation in their wake as they continue to navigate this beautiful, dizzying maze of their own creation, forever addicted to the high they find only in each other. The air between them thickens with every passing second, morphing into a palpable, living entity that thrives in the spaces they refuse to leave empty. Taehyung commands this shared reality with an almost regal nonchalance, his every posture exuding a dark, magnetic authority that draws Jungkook's gaze like a moth to an inescapable flame. There is no hesitation in the way Taehyung claims the space around him, leaning back with a slow, knowing smirk that seems to challenge Jungkook to try and look away. It is a masterclass in silent control, where a simple tilt of the chin or a deliberate, heavy blink communicates a universe of possessive intent, wrapping around Jungkook like a velvet shroud that is as comforting as it is utterly suffocating. Jungkook responds to this unspoken dominance not with submission, but with a fierce, burning intensity that elevates their dynamic into something legendary. He watches the way Taehyung's lips part, the way the stage lights catch the sharp edge of his jawline, and you can see the exact moment Jungkook loses the battle against his own fascination. The rhythmic pulse of the music serves as the heartbeat for this silent confrontation, a driving, intoxicating loop that mirrors the circular nature of their attraction. Jungkook steps closer, defying the boundaries of the crowded room, his eyes dark with a mixture of challenge and absolute devotion as he forces Taehyung to acknowledge the raw power of the reaction he has provoked. When their eyes finally lock, the rest of the world dissolves into meaningless background noise, leaving only the sharp, electric current running between them. Taehyung's gaze holds a heavy, dark warmth, a molten intensity that seems to read every hidden thought Jungkook tries to keep buried. It is a look of absolute certainty, the gaze of someone who knows he holds the keys to the other's undoing and takes a slow, deliberate pleasure in that knowledge. Jungkook doesn't flinch or break the connection, instead, he holds Taehyung's stare with a breathless, defiant vulnerability, allowing the camera to capture a moment of pure, unadulterated tension that feels almost too intimate for public consumption. This constant tug of war manifests in the smallest, most agonizingly beautiful details, a hand lingering a fraction of a second too long on a waist, a whispered word that causes a sudden, sharp intake of breath, or a synchronized movement that feels less like choreography and more like a shared instinct. Taehyung enjoys the chase, pulling back just far enough to make Jungkook pursue him, only to turn around and close the distance with a sudden, breathless finality that leaves them standing heart to heart. This is the peak of their intoxicating rhythm, a state of being where the boundaries between who is leading and who is following become completely blurred in the heat of the moment. As the final notes of their shared melody begin to echo and fade, the emotional gravity of what they share leaves a lingering ache, an addictive residue that makes it impossible not to want to rewrite the loop and watch it all over again. They remain anchored in each other's presence, a testament to a bond that is fueled by an undeniable, dangerous chemistry that burns far too bright to ever be extinguished. Every glance exchanged, every breathless second spent in each other's shadow, only solidifies the truth that they are hopelessly caught in an endless, beautiful cycle, forever bound by a heat that belongs exclusively to them.